So our second lesson on the origins of Rome are about Romulus and his reign as king. So Romulus 753, 714 BC when he's said to have died, but not really, because you know what, he didn't exist. So I know what Romulus did when he was king. I understand this is important but not true. I can explain why we are learning fiction. Keywords: chronology, the sequence of events, the time. That's an example of chronology. Asylum, it's a Roman term for political safety. We'll talk about that in a minute. Fortifications, castle walls. Patron client. If you're the patron, you look after somebody. The person you look after is your client. Patrician, where the word patron comes from, the posh people in Rome. Plebeian, the clients, the ordinary people of Rome. Patrician, plebeian. Senate, who give advice to the king. Democracy, where the people choose their leaders. Temple, church. Jupiter, a Roman god, the Roman version of Zeus. Tribune and centurion are military posts, sort of, general, sergeant. Legion, army. Sabine, which is people who live near Rome. Spolia or Pima, a particular award you can get for bravery in Rome. Romulus was the first person to get it. So, quiz. 5 questions based on the previous lesson. If you're reading them and you don't know the answer, watch the previous lesson because you will need to know the answers to these 5 questions. Okay. The Romans believed that Romulus founded Rome, killed Remus, founded Rome on the same day, became its first king on the 21st of April 753 BC. This is not true, but the Romans believed it. So what did he achieve? Number 1, they say Romulus brought in the idea of asylum. There's a temple in the middle of Rome. This is built on the site of it, they say. If anybody who could reach that temple and enter it became Roman. If you're a criminal somewhere else, you got there, you're Roman. If you had to leave your country because of war, forced out, you're a refugee, you got there, you became Roman. You're a slave, you escaped your master, you got there, you became Roman. How true? Not really true. Romulus didn't do this, but that was the law, we think, in early Rome. It's how Rome grew, by taking in anybody. You didn't have to be born there to be Roman. And the Romans did have a system whereby if you were a slave and you were freed, you became a Roman. City walls. Romulus is said to have built the earliest fortifications around the city of Rome. There is no archaeological evidence really to back this up. Patrician and plebeian. Romulus is said to have brought in this system. The patricians, 100 of the richest, most powerful and advanced men in Rome, acted as advisors and helped out plebeians. So a patrician might have 100 plebeians who were his clients. He protected them, they helped him. Patrician-client relationship, patron-client. How true? This is almost certainly, Romulus didn't do this, but this is the system that existed in Rome when these history books were written down. Senate. Romulus is said to have started the Senate, to have invited the patricians to form a group that gave him advice. Almost certainly not true, but again, it's describing the system of government the Romans had when all this was written down. The Senate. Democracy. Romulus is said to have brought in a system of democracy of some sort for the Roman people. There was a committee, the Comitia Curiata, that helped run the city, gave him advice, and different groups of Romans got to vote for who got to sit on this committee. He brought in that system. It wasn't one man, one vote. So these guys here in togas, they got one vote between them, and these hundreds of plebeians, they also got one vote. So it wasn't a fair system, because if you were rich, you got more votes. But it was a type of democracy. How true? Almost certainly not true. But again, it's just the Romans trying to explain how their system that they had came about. Religion. Romulus is said to have built the first temples in Rome, and to be the one who decided they would follow a version of Greek religions. They would have Zeus, but they called him Jupiter. They would have Neptune, deciding they swapped the names around. How true? It wasn't Romulus did this. The Romans did do this. It happened at some point. The Romans just don't know when it happened. Military. Romulus is said to have brought in a system whereby each group of Romans lived in what's called a tribe. Each tribe had a tribune who was in charge of organising the men for war. He was a tribune, he had a few centurions organised around into groups of 100, and centurion and century. And that way the Romans were constantly ready for war, and they could gather an army very quickly. How true? Almost certainly not true at all. Romulus didn't do this. This did happen later on, but Romulus didn't do it. Rome was way too small when Romulus started, well, when it was started to have this sort of system. Way too advanced. But again, all of these things here, asylum, city walls, patrician plebeians, senate, democracy, religion, the military reforms, they're not, Romulus didn't start these, but they did exist. It's a way for the Romans to explain how all this came into being. Which explains this, hopefully, explains this assessment question. If all this is rubbish, why would the Romans believe it? The Romans wanted to explain why things were the way they were. All this was written down. All this stuff here we've done was written down for the first time in the 2nd century BC, between 100 and 200 BC, when all this existed. No one really knew how it happened. Nobody could really explain why the Romans organised things the way they did. So they made up a bunch of stories to explain it. Stories that they'd heard. They didn't just make it up like Harry Potter style. They were based on earlier legends that had been passed down orally by, spoken word. Right, last bit today. Early story of Rome, the rape of the Sabine women. Right, I'll start again. The rape of the Sabine women. Early story from Rome. Here's the thing. Romulus, through asylum, is said to have gathered together the riff-raff of Central Italy. Escaped slave, criminals, refugees, almost all men. Can't have a city if you've got just men. Ask the neighbours, neighbouring tribes, neighbouring people, can we marry some of your daughters? They said no. So here's the plan. They put on a party, a festival to the god Neptune, and invited everybody to come to the party. And they all did. They all did. At this party, at a signal from Romulus, his men, the Romans, grabbed some of the women of a neighbouring tribe called the Sabines and dragged them off and kidnapped them. And then what happened next is a sort of matter for debate. Some people say they were raped, or they say no, they were made husbands, they were made the wives of these men. Either way, the Sabines are not very happy. Their neighbours from Canina, to help the Sabines, attack the Romans, led by their king Acro. In the fighting there, Romulus kills Acro and takes his armour. This is called spolia opima, to kill the enemy commander and take their armour. Months later, the Sabines get together, led by their king Titus, and attack Rome. So the Sabines, according to the story, took just over 9 months to get their act together, to gather their forces to attack Rome. That's important, 9 months. So they attack. There's a battle in early Rome. It's going badly for the Romans. In the midst of the battle, the Sabine women march onto the battlefield with their babies. It's been 9 months. And say, stop this war. We have to stop this war now. I don't want my father or my husband to die, and if you keep on, one of those things has to happen. Because of this, the two sides agree to stop the war and become great friends. In fact, Titus and Romulus become such close friends, they make a deal, they'll both become co-kings of their peoples. So Romulus becomes the king of Rome and the Sabines, and Titus is the king of the Sabines and Rome. Luckily for everyone, he died not long afterwards, so Romulus becomes king of Rome and the Sabines. Now, is this true? Clearly not. Clearly not. Archaeology shows none of this happened. There's no sign of any of this. The battle said to take place in the Forum. Archaeology shows that the Forum at that point was just a swamp. There's no sign any of this is true. But it's a great story. So what is weird about it? The Romans told this story. And what's weird about this? They said this is a story that doesn't make the Romans look good. Kidnapping and raping their neighbours is not normally a story you want to tell people. So it's quite unusual, and therefore we think, well, you know what? Something like this may have happened.